Hey everybody, Dimitri here, and today I wanted to give you guys a quick review of this 9mm Brembo Clutch Master, which is a very popular modification in the hard enduro community for hard enduro riding. So the first thing I wanted to say is I have about 100 hours on this 9mm Master now. I've ridden with the stock 10mm Bractec Master before that, and I've actually gone quite a bit back and forth between the 9mm and the stock Master, because I've ridden the stock Master in Romania, so I have a pretty good feel of going back and forth between the two. So this specific Master is actually a Sherco part. It's exactly the same as a KTM, so this is a top tip to save you a little bit of money. If you just look for the Sherco part, it's like 50 bucks cheaper, and it comes with a stock Brembo lever, which is nice. So if you're going from a Bractec to a Brembo, you will also need a clutch line, because the clutch line is different. This fitting right here, the Bractec uses a banjo bolt, pretty much like this, and the Brembo is threads right into there. So it's a different setup. But otherwise, the installation is very easy. You do need to bleed the system, obviously, because it comes empty, and it does bolt up perfectly fine to the stock Bractec slave cylinder on the clutch side. So I'm going to go through the pros and cons. I think the pros are pretty obvious, and that's what everybody focuses on, but I think the cons are very important to keep in mind, because there is something you sacrifice with this setup, and it is very important for hard enduro, especially if you're racing. All right, so the pros, first of all, very obvious one is the light clutch pull. The clutch pull is very, very noticeably lighter. When I go from riding a bike with a stock, like stock Brembo or stock Bractec, to this, to me, riding this bike almost feels like a trials bike. So if you're doing something really slow, it works really, really well. And that's really the big advantage here, is the light clutch pull and the longer engagement / friction zone that you get as a result, because hydraulically that's kind of how it all works out. You put in less force because you're putting in more motion. You have to move the piston here a larger distance to move a smaller distance here, and that's why the pull is lighter. So that translates to this being a much more forgiving setup. So if you're doing some really, really slow maneuvers like pivot turns, or working on the side of a hill where the bike is in front of you, and you really need that really, really precise clutch control, especially if you're reaching up over your head, where maybe you don't have the best grip on the bars, this is much more forgiving. You're much less likely to release the clutch rapidly and cause wheel spin and things like that. So I think that is kind of the big advantage here. For doing some of this really, really technical stuff, it's much more forgiving. So now let's talk a little bit about the things that you sacrifice. So as I mentioned, the clutch engagement / friction zone is much wider, so it takes more lever movement to go from fully disengaged to fully engaged, and this could be a problem, because you need to be very deliberate when you want to fully disengage the clutch, especially if you have smaller hands or shorter fingers. I actually have pretty short fingers. I wear a size medium glove, and you can kind of see my palm to finger ratio. My fingers are pretty short, so this is actually kind of like at the top of the comfort level for me. Like if this was a little bit of a longer engagement point, I would not be able to use this. So you have to be very, very deliberate. Otherwise, what you'll find with this setup is that you end up riding the clutch a lot, which in many cases is fine. But if you're doing something where you need to deliver full power and full traction very quickly, you need to be very deliberate with this. On a stock setup, you can there's not as much range of motion there. So you move the finger a little bit and you got full power. Here you need to move it a lot and to fully deliver that power. So if you're trying to go up a hill with minimum run up, or you are going up a hill and you need to make sure you're getting full drive and full power, full traction, you need to be very deliberately off the clutch, and you need to move your finger very quickly if you're trying to get that rapid release of power. Otherwise, you will slip your clutch, and this is very noticeable to me. You'll slip your clutch, you'll not deliver as much power as you want, and you'll fail on obstacles or hill climbs or things of that nature. So this is definitely a downside to this setup, especially also if you have your clutch adjusted, kind of like how I normally do it. So where my finger is all the way to the end, so I get a little bit more leverage. On this one, I actually adjusted it so my finger is kind of in the middle here to compensate for that lighter clutch, and I can kind of go back and forth depending on what I'm doing, but this way I can still get that quick release. Otherwise, like I said, you end up dragging it and you end up not really doing what you want to do for some of those bigger obstacles or hill climbs or things like that. So just to summarize, this often gets sold as like the must-do modification if you're riding hard enduro, but I feel like there's no free lunch. So you're getting a lighter pull, but you need to move your finger more. So there's a sacrifice to everything. And even though this makes some of the more technical, really, really slow maneuvers easier, it also makes it a little bit easier to make mistakes and drag the clutch, and also is not great if you have very small hands or very short fingers. So just something to keep in mind, guys. If you have any questions, leave a comment, and see you out on the trails.